Yeah. Really? Now tell me.
And Tia Wordaball.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're the
that's my
daughter?
mom. Yeah.
Wow, that makes me feel old. Oh my goodness, wow.
Ben Lehman.
Ben Lehman, and your parents?
Kim and Doug Lehman. But you might know...
Yeah, I know them. I know your parents, yeah.
Really?
I do know them, yes I do. And who else is in your family?
Helen and Larry Lehman. I don't know if you know
Larry
them
Lehman, yes.
too.
I do.
That's awesome.
I do, yeah,
That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Aaron McBeth.
McBeth.
Parents are Edward and Stephanie McBeth.
Stephanie McBeth. Do I know them? I don't think I know
I don't
them,
think
yeah.
so.
Where do you go to church at?
Waynesboro Baptist.
Waynesboro Baptist. Fitz was there at one time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, who's there now?
It's Pastor Scahill.
Scahill, yeah, I don't think I know him, yeah. I knew Bob Fitz pretty well, though, yeah, yeah. Well, good to see you all, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I came dressed for the picnic, just so you know.
Well, we pretty much got a top half shot. So.
Okay. I think this is delightful, I'm delighted to do this, this is great.
I'm going to say thank you. This is going to be part of a multi-year project. The Honors U.S. History students, this is our first year. We have taken a look into schools starting in the 1970s, and we've taken a look at, read some of the yearbook letters that you had written to the students. We also took a look into how other schools relate their history. And since we have a captive audience, because you actually were coming into town, we thought we'd have the opportunity to interview you. We gave you several questions, so you're all prepped and know what you're going to say.
I've read the questions, I sure have, yeah.
I do have a couple surprise questions at the end.
That's fine, that's great.
As we looked at the yearbooks, I saw about the fire that had happened, and so I'll probably be asking. I'm kind of curious of, what's your perspective on that, and also how you ended up finding the Laymaster School, because I ended up going past that school when I went to James Buchanan all the time, and I had no idea it had CVCS history behind it. So what's going to happen is that they have picked a selection of questions that they would like to ask you and get your perspective on. They have some follow-up questions if we run across them. I've been assigned a set of questions as well. And just to let you know, that's our primary camera, and I have that camera shooting them. Okay. And then I also have, they're getting audio, but these are getting audio as well, because I know I have one shot at this and I did not want to mess anything up. I'm going to be a little bit personal here, folks. Thank you very much, Dr. Pedrone. I appreciate when I came up here through here that you were my pastor, and all the things that you did to influence the school, the church, and me personally. I thank you very much. The silly story is I got baptized here, and Tom Williamson was the guy who baptized me. Yeah. And there was a leak in his hip boots. And we were waiting for you to get done making announcements, and you kept on finding more things to talk about.
I didn't know that I'd have gone longer.
So, to fill a little bit of the history, both for the interview and also for the students, Dr. Pedrone, pretty much, there were a couple of pastors before Dr. Pedrone started Open Door Church. He oversaw as the church moved from what is across from the Chambersburg Community Center, and had moved up here into this beautiful facility, and they've been building. In the process of coming up here as well, they also got into the idea of starting a Christian school. The purpose of the interview, if you're listening, is to get Dr. Pedrone's perspectives on what went into even thinking about the idea of starting a school, and how they went about starting a school here in the Chambersburg area. The three interviewers that we have from the Honors United States History course here at Cumberland Valley Christian School, we have Katie Sugden, Ben Lehman, and Aaron McBeth. The other students were unable to come either by job requirements or because there's a soccer game this afternoon.
I understand soccer.
And they had to be there. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Mr. McBeth, who has the first set of questions for Dr. Pedrone.
Right?
This is Aaron.
Aaron, this is Aaron. This is Ben.
They're in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Aaron, Ben, Katie.
Okay, good. All right.
All right. Well, first I want to say thank you for letting us interview you.
Time out. You're going to have to speak up and enunciate, not your normal mumble.
What was your inspiration behind starting CVCS?
Well, back in the 70s, there were Christian schools starting at the rate of one a day in America. There were many Christian schools that were moving away from the public school system. And back in those days, the struggle was with secular humanism. And secular humanism was coming to the public school system. And so there were many parents who were saying, why don't we do something in this community? And so what I did is I did a survey with the parents that had children in our church, or teenagers in our church. And we began to ask the questions about the school system and what they were looking at. And out of that survey, there was obviously a need for a Christian school in this community. So what I did is I gave a message on a Sunday night. I advertised what the message would be. I gave the result of a lot of the data I had collected. And I said, this does speak about a Christian school. So I think from that embryonic beginning and that thought, it was something that we needed in this community. So we didn't start a school because one was starting every day, but we began one because we felt burdened that it should be started here in Chambersburg. And we had a lot of groundswell of support, even from public school teachers that said we need to have this kind of a school in the community. So it was kind of an exciting time. Our church was growing, and we had just moved up to this campus. We're in the process of moving up here. But actually the embryonic starting of that was when we were down at 3rd and Washington Streets. And we began with that thought down there. So it was a great start for us, Aaron. We were really excited about it.
Do you think that Christian education will always be needed?
It's a good question. I think Christian education has changed a lot over the years, and I think one of the things that has changed is vision. And I think a lot of Christian schools struggle today for lack of vision. And I think it is important for leadership to begin to ask themselves the question, why are we investing this money? Why are we asking parents to invest this money in a Christian school? What is the vision of the school? When I left here, I went to Florida, and I had 2 Christian schools I oversaw. We had around 1,800 students in those 2 schools. They were large schools for Christian schools. And I oversaw a school association of nearly 60,000 people down there. And I visited many of them, talked to many of them, and the biggest issue always was, what is the vision? For example, in Miami, Florida, one of the visions was safety, because there's so many problems in the school system down there. So, but I don't think that's the great vision to have a Christian school. You can have a good prep school and make it safe. And so I think the real issue back then, as it needs to be today, is what is the vision of a Christian school? Why do we have it?
What do you think the purpose of a Christian education is now, or what it was back then?
I think the heart of Christian education needs to be in the theology, what it is we believe. In my judgment, the greatest science is theology. What is it we believe about God? And if that's the case, if we have a certain fact about what we believe about God, and then children and young people need to be taught that. So if they're not in the Christian school, I think it behooves parents to ask themselves the question, where will we have our children learn that? Where will our teenagers learn that? And so the Christian school that is based upon that kind of a theology, the essence of God and who God is a great start to have a Christian school. So I think in Christian education today, and if people have Christian schools today, I think they need to be very sincere in looking at the vision and seeing if it's based upon the theological core. When I say theology, I'm looking at theology as a science, that it is not just an art, it is a science. The Bible is very clear about certain things. There's a biblical worldview we should be following. And so if that's true, then that should be the basis of everything we do. And when we don't have that basis, then the rest of the educational system, I think, has a flaw in it because of the foundation. So Christian schools, I feel, should be Christian in that sense. What is our vision, and what is our theology? What is our basic belief system?
How did you want this school to be different from other Christian schools?
Yeah, if I remember right, I don't remember what other Christian schools were in the area back then. I think maybe Bethel Assembly down the street might have had one. I don't really remember. But there weren't a lot of Christian schools around at that time. There was some in Maryland. There was some in West Virginia. There was some in Virginia that I knew about. But what I wanted was a school that would become a school of excellence. From the very beginning, although I knew we could not be accredited right up front, I knew that we wanted our school to be an accredited school. We wanted to be the best we could be. have excellence in every area that we could. Again, with that foundation that's based upon the biblical worldview. Talking about accredited schools back in that day, Aaron, was not a popular thing amongst Christians because they looked at accreditation as being something kind of evil. I never did look at it as evil. I looked at it as something that made us accountable. If we said we're doing something, this makes us accountable. So I always looked at it as an area of accountability, and if we do this and do it well, then we should put ourselves before peers like that. Now again, if accreditation made us compromise our faith, that's a different story. But I have never found that with accreditation. Accreditation is very difficult, it's very challenging. When you're in the middle of doing it, you might think it's a good thing to get out of, but the fact is we got to move on that and get it done. So I feel very strongly that it needs to be that kind of an education.
Did you see the school ever operating without the help of the church?
No, it's kind of interesting. I'm not against schools that are outside of the church, obviously, but we had a good church, we had a solid church. I felt we had the right theology at the church. And I felt we had the kind of a church that could build a structure for a Christian school. When we moved up here, we started with 12 acres, and now I believe it's over 50 acres here, which is plenty of room for a Christian school like this. And so I really feel strongly that the church, the open door church, is very much the heart of what this school is all about. It should be a school for the community. Anybody can come who wants to be in some way a follower of Christ. It is a Christian school, but it's a school that really is based upon the issue of authority and Scripture and those kind of things. So I felt very good about the church being the mother of the program.
What did you want the school to represent?
Well, I wanted the school to put out a product of young people that were committed to Christ more than anything. Our original name that we used, and most people thought after a while, I felt the same way, it was a little too nebulous for the world today, was Martys, which comes from the Greek word that means martyr, taken from Acts chapter 1 and verse 8. It says, we shall be witnesses, but the word literally means a martyr for the cause of Christ. And so I always envisioned young people that were sold out to Christ, going in many fields of life, many, many avenues of life, but really selling themselves out to Jesus Christ. I think one of the negatives of a Christian school is that fact that you can get yourself so ingrained in the school you don't reach the world. You're not in the world. I would not want that with Christian education. But I think it's a battle that goes on in Christian education. You get your friends and you get focused here locally, which is a good thing, but you need to be able to reach out into the world. So there are Christian schools that do well as community schools, and I'm all for them. But for me and my own philosophy, I like the idea of a local church school that was really zeroing in on the doctrines and teachings of the church that came across into the school.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I get the next set of questions, and he's already hit on a couple of them. But the one question, and I should have said this at the beginning, these questions were not just developed by these three students. All the kids that were, all the students, I can't call them kids, that are in the course developed them.
They're very good questions, by the way. I've looked through them. They're well thought out. They're the right questions.
How did you see that the school would benefit the church?
Yeah, when we began the school, there was a perception that some had that the students that would come here would end up going to the church. That's usually not the case. Sometimes it is the case, but usually not the case. I never looked at the school being something that should be a great benefit to the church by putting people into the church. But I looked at the church as being a great benefit to the school by kind of mothering this institution, so that this institution could be reach into many, many other quarters of life. Now, there are obviously people that come to the school and end up coming to the church. But really, it should be the other way around, I feel, Tony. That it needs to be the church helping the school, promoting the school. And now, there comes a time when finances become an issue with that, and the economic issues are there. Our school in Florida that I had, for example, was a huge moneymaker at the end of the day because students were paying up to $10,000 a year to come to the school. It was very, very expensive to come. But it wasn't for those reasons. It was for the fact that the church kind of gives the guideline and the direction for the Christian school. There are many benefits the church gets from the school, though. And one of those benefits, I think, is it's the ability in the community to talk about what God's doing at the school, the kind of people we put out into the community, into jobs, going on to graduate schools and high school, on into college and on into graduate schools. I think all of that's very much a positive. It speaks well of the church when that happens as well. But I think the greater benefit goes to the school than it does to the church.
Okay. Could you go kind of talk to us a little bit about how, the first couple years of how the school started and the interaction between the school getting started and the church?
Yeah, those were exciting days, to say the least. They were really exciting. We began, again, I did this speech at the church, talked about the need of a Christian school. And then we got a group of guys together down at 3rd and Washington Street, and we had a prayer meeting. And there was 5 of us, and we prayed, and we kind of said, Lord, we're gonna move on this. And so those were exciting days. I think the biggest issue we had in the early days was when to start. And this building, the complex up here, the original complex, was starting in 1974. It was going to be open in May. And so I said let's start in August. Some wanted to start a year later than that. But we started in August. We got it going. I don't remember the population, maybe 150, 160 students, something like that. But the biggest issue was getting teachers, finding qualified teachers. Back in those days, the teachers were members of the church as well, so you had to join the church. It was quite a bit of work that had to go into all of that. And I think the church was very supportive as I look back on that. I had a few people that were concerned about taking the salt out of the public school, which I think is a genuine concern. But on a whole, our church was very excited about starting a Christian school. I think the community was happy that we started it. Being small like that, we did not have the exposure the school has today. Our sports teams were frankly very pitiful back in those days. We were just trying to get a team on the court. Mm-hmm. And I remember one year we had a basketball team and one boy that could play well, and the goal was to get it down so he could shoot it. So there were a lot of embryonic things like that started the school. But it was a very exciting, I think, pioneering stuff. It really appeals to me, and that was a pioneering venture that we had. It was really exciting.
Do you know those 5 guys?
The 5 guys are Carol Wright, Dick Myers, Carl McKee, myself, and there's one other I do not remember. In fact, I was thinking about that coming here. I'm hoping the person is here to remind me. Those were the 5 guys that prayed. Carol Wright was very, very helpful because he knew education well. Mm-hmm. Dick Myers had a burden for this type of thing. His son Steve was here for a while, and in the school, and of course Carl's been here forever. So I guess he goes back to Noah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Those are my questions, so we'll pass it on to Ms. Sugden.
Yeah. So what went into starting the school? Like, how did you start?
That's a great question. When we started the school, we decided that it was basically a tuition-based operation. The church provided the facility. We had some funds that we provided, but really the tuition would have to pay for the faculty. And so we started that way. We had these students that came. I don't remember what it cost, but it wasn't a whole lot of money back in those days to start the school. And we really were able to come up with some pretty good teachers back then. I was amazed at how, I remember Vicki Steinberger was here, for example, with a master's degree, and she was a super teacher. There was a bunch of people like that came in here. I think Sue Schmuck started with us from the beginning, if I remember right. I think Nancy Lundy, who was a winger back then, I think started with us. But we found some people embryonically. We started with them, and we put the classrooms together. It was obvious once we got the school started that we needed more buildings. It was obvious because you got Sunday school, you got programs going on at night, you got the school in the daytime, and whose stuff belongs to whose stuff, all those kind of issues that go on. So, but it was really a very exciting time for all of us. It really was.
Just to help you out, the first 2 hires Mr. McKee always talks about was Nancy Wenger, who became Nancy Lundy, and Coach Doug Lawson.
Oh, Doug Lawson, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Doug Lawson.
Those were the
he
first
was a
2
good
hires.
soccer coach, by the way.
Yes.
We went to the national championship game, lost it, but we went to it years ago. I remember that. Yeah, thank you.
I believe that was 83.
83.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Doug Lawson. Yeah, it was in Chicago, I think, wasn't it? Or
yes.
Yeah, in Chicago. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Did you face any opposition when you started to?
Well, I think the opposition, there's very little opposition in the church. I think the church, when we put the data out, we talked about what we're looking at. I think it was clear that we should start a Christian school. I don't remember a lot of opposition in the church. I think there are some people, again, who felt like they're taking the salt out of the public school system. And I think that's a legitimate concern. I do. I think that is a concern. I think today the greatest mission field in America is the public school system, for example. So I think there are legitimate issues with that type of thing. I think in the community, there were probably educators, as I remember, who wondered why we're doing something like this. Don't you think we're good enough? And you have that kind of an attitude. But there wasn't a lot of that. We, frankly, had a lot of public school teachers in the church back then who were very endorsing of what we did. I remember one, after I gave my speech, came up to me and said, well, you need to move on that and make that happen. And he was very well grounded in this community, in this public school system. So there wasn't a lot of opposition. And I think also there was a sense of popularity of Christian schools in America at the time that was very helpful. A lot of Christian schools were starting. So
How did you get the resources to start a school?
prayer. It was really prayer. I mean, we built this building. It's interesting. This building was built. We initially did a $500,000 bond issue, and it wasn't enough money. So then we did a second bond issue. If I remember correctly, I think we brought in $136,000 in that. People in the church were buying bonds, and then eventually many of them gave that money back to the church anyhow. But they could get their interest in principal out of that. We borrowed money at the bank. I don't remember, maybe $200,000 at the bank. I think it was around $800,000 to get the church up and running. So with the school, we did everything at the beginning, basically through tuition. We bought the goods, we bought the books, we bought everything we could through tuition and those type of things. So, but eventually people started giving money to the school. We would get checks coming in from all over, actually from different people that believed in Christian education, and it was a huge step of faith. But I think the pioneering spirit is a great spirit, and it's exciting starting new things, and it's fun starting new things. Sometimes you have to, I always feel with vision, you see it, and then it changes. And so sometimes it changes. I think if I remember, we did the first 8 grades to start with and kept adding a grade on, if I remember correctly. So.
How did you encourage people to enroll their children?
Well, we found a number of students immediately coming. Parents wanted them here. Many in our church did that, and there were many in the community that did that. So we did some basic advertising through the public opinion and did some advertising through our television and radio programs we had back in those days. We had TV all over the area and all over this part of the country, actually, and radio at a number of stations. And so we would advertise that way. Then the biggest thing was word of mouth. I remember those early days, people that came in, they would sit down and talk with us and say, somebody told us about your school, we want to ask you about it. And so that's how it began. So, and again, that was a very enjoyable period of time for the ministry. We took on a lot. We took on coming to this campus. We took on building these buildings, buying the property, and starting a Christian school all at the same time. So it's a lot of fun.
Was there a list of responsibilities for your staff?
Yeah, there was. The way we began, Carl McKee became my right-hand man at the beginning, and so Carl and I pretty much chose the faculty, and with the staff, we would have church people work with the school, and so the maintenance team was primarily church people, and then we brought in a lot of volunteers that would help us. Volunteers were huge back in those days, and they still are today, I'm sure, at the church, and so we would do a lot of those kind of things, and many of the people that came to help us were people that really saw the difference in some of the young people's lives that were coming to the school here. So again, it was exciting days, very exciting. I challenge all three of you to go out and do something pioneering, have some fun.
I think that's all my questions.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for everything you've done. Just, I know myself have the going to the school has definitely changed my life. And
praise God.
I
See, that's what
day.
means so much to me when I hear something like that. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
I'm going to ask about what did you see was the difference between, or what difference did you want to make between public schools and ours, or CVCS?
Yeah, I don't think I had a lot of desire about changing anything other than to say that the worldview is different. The Christian education view is that there's a biblical worldview. And again, it's based upon the theology, the science of theology, who God is. And it's the teaching that the foundation of everything is God. It's the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so when I looked at it, I didn't look at this to hammer the public schools even, but to say we need to have an alternative. We need to have something different. I think the homeschool movement today is swelling all over with the same kind of ideas that were back in the 60s and 70s with the Christian school movement. The homeschool movement is a very good movement today. There are many, many people that are involved in the homeschool movement that are highly educated and people of great desires. And so so when I look back at that today, I would say again, my whole essence in starting it was the theology of it, the heart of it, the foundation of a Christ-centered institution. And, you know, there's a great book called The Dying of the Light. You can't get it anymore. It's out of print. It was written by a guy named Burchell. I was going to buy it for the trustees of Davis College. I looked up online to buy one. It's about $300 a book today because they're out of print. So I decided to get them a different gift. But it's a book that talks about most institutions begin in the Northeast as a Christian institution, and then they begin to die off. Harvard, Yale, Colgate, all these schools. And what happened was the essence of the book says, usually a charming, charismatic president comes in with ideas that aren't bad ideas. Then the board starts making business decisions that aren't Christian. Then it gets into the faculty, and what's in the faculty, the school is lost. And so that's something I always emphasize anytime I'm involved in Christian education, is to make sure that we have our heart in the Word of God, our heart in theology first and foremost. Because that to me is the big concern, and that's where schools begin to wander.
How did the discipline in CVCS, how was it compared to the public schools?
It was really different back in those days. I would say this to you, I'm not sure we knew what we were doing sometimes with discipline. We kind of learned as we went along with that. And I really felt that we were too hard on students at the beginning. And I don't know why that was, but I think parents kind of expected some of that with us. And so I look at students becoming teenagers. Yeah, there's still a lot of child in them, but there's a lot of adult in them too. I work with college students now all the time. I say, I'm going to treat you like an adult unless you cause me to treat you some other way. So if you're like an adult, you're going to make mistakes. We're all sinners saved by grace. So there's always going to be things that we're dealing with. But I think the discipline of the college, of the Cumberland Valley Christian School, is the same kind of philosophy I have in the college today, which is let's grow up, let's learn, let's mature. We're all on a journey. Nobody's arrived yet. Let's keep gradually growing to where we need to be at. I think there's times when there's stern discipline really needed. I think there's parental issues where parents have to come in and we say, you know, this is what Johnny and Susie did. This is what we got to deal, how we got to deal with it. But I really want to encourage young people to walk with Christ and walk with God and follow the Lord and see what God has for them in their life. So discipline is an ongoing journey. And I would say in the first few years, we were really embryonically learning that.
How did the academics compare between?
In the early days, the academics were weaker, but very shortly they were catching up. And I really felt that once the school addressed accreditation and those kind of things, we would be on the par with anybody. And so it's kind of interesting. The school is now middle stakes approved, which is a very good move for the school. And I began that back I think in the late 80s, 90s. It was a long process to do that. But it's a process of looking not just at accreditation, but at assessment, strategic plans, and all those kind of things. I think when they get in place, the school becomes a very strong institution. And I think that was a big help to us. So finding curriculum was not difficult. Finding good teachers eventually was not that difficult. At the college where I'm at now, we've got lists of people that want to teach at the college that we can't hire because we don't have positions for them. But I think the school here has got a pretty good history of good faculty and some really good people here. And again, it's not hard to find curriculum nowadays, good curriculum. So I would put a school like Cumberland Valley up against any school academically. And, it depends on the students and their application and so forth to things. But Christian education should never take a back seat to anything. And especially if the foundation in Christ is correct. which is why I say we have Christian schools, for the foundation being the science of theology.
Thanks for the compliment.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I do mean you.
I know you talked about this a little bit, but when did the school start its athletic programs, and when you did, what did you start with?
Yeah, let me go back to that, because I don't remember what year we started, and I think basketball and maybe volleyball were the first things. And back in those days, it was kind of interesting. You know, basically, if you know what a basketball looks like and know a couple plays, you'll probably be the coach, because we didn't have a lot back in those days. And many of the games we played, we got destroyed in because we just weren't ready, you know. I remember my son played in one of the teams here, and you know, we could beat 35-10, you know, in basketball of all things. And the other team wasn't that good either, but it took a long time to get up down the court and make a basket. But I think bringing people in like Doug Lawson, for example, I think bringing people in who knew how to coach. I think the addition of Tom Kakanya, for example, those kind of people brought in here, really was a huge help to getting us to where we need to be at. I understand the sports are doing very well here now. We've had a couple of guys come to our college from here, and our basketball team at our college is really raising its level, and they've done well at Davis College. And so I believe that athletics, I believe the arts are very much an important part of a Christian school. And there are many students who are very athletically inclined, young men and young women both. They ought to have the programs for them. And the same is true in the arts, and some are involved in other areas. But I think those kind of things are very much a part of the development of a young person with Christian education.
Yeah, and you were speaking about the arts. What did you have set goals for growing your arts programs in the school at the time?
Yeah, we did. I remember when we put on Patch the Pirate the first time. That was quite an episode. Yeah. And I mean a good episode. It was a very exciting time. My son played Patch one time in Patch the Pirate, and I kind of liked him up there. He liked showing off, so he enjoyed doing that. And you know, I really enjoyed watching some of those programs. I think one of the neatest things I saw from the very beginning was Miss Winger, who's now Mrs. Lundy, doing her kindergarten graduation, and those children doing their little play. I remember one of my sons played Grandpa in this play. He just sat and stared. He never did a thing, just stared the whole time with his beard on. But it was such a neat thing watching those kids develop like that. And again, I think the arts are a very important part of education today. I think sports are. There are many other things that go in with it as well, but those two are very key. I think music is a very key component of Christian schools. As soon as a school is able to develop a good music program, and I think it should be broad, I think it should be include performance, I think those kind of things are very important for a Christian school.
Did you ever see the school growing to what it is, and do you ever see it growing to be the size of a public school?
Well, in the beginning, I really felt this school could probably go to 500 to 700. I believe now it can grow beyond that. And I say that because of the population of this area and of the need of a school like this. I would envision Cumberland Valley Christian School soon becoming very much a choice for many people. When you make a choice like this, you have to pay money to send your child. The taxes that parents pay do not pay for this. And so that becomes an issue. But I really think a school like this one is going to be very competitive in this community in many ways. The schools I had in Florida, I looked at them the same way. They became very, very potentially competitive. Now, things that will change that are the economy. I think the economy in Chambersburg is doing very well. I think unemployment here is 5%, which is terrific. Now that may change. If that changes, I think Christian education could change. A lot of it's based upon the economy. I think the other big part of it is based upon how people view education. And again, there's a huge need today to understand the theology of an education, the science of an education. And there are a lot of young people that are raised today, they don't go to a Christian church. They do not go to a Christian school. They become adults, they have no idea who Jesus is. They have no idea if he was a carpenter, if he was a legend, if he was a rock star. They don't know. They have no idea who Jesus is. And so because of that, and because of that foundation, I think Christian schools are very much on the same place, the same level of a parochial school like a Roman Catholic school, where there can be very, very competitive in those fields. I would also recommend that Christian schools not always be in Christian leagues. Get out of the Christian leagues. Play if you can, the public schools. If you get whipped the first few years, play them. Get out there and play them, because there's something about that testimony. Our college team, for example, our basketball team. The reason I read that ring right there, that's a national championship ring for our Bible college. I'm very proud of that. I've never had a ring like that before, but our college won the national championship in basketball, the NIT, a few years ago. And when our team plays, when they're done playing, they gather in the middle with whoever school they're with and pray with them for safety when they go home and all that kind of thing. We've only had one school refuse to do that with us. But we look at that as a testimony to them as well. And so I think Christian schools have a great vision, but again, I fear that in the Christian school movement, we have schools to protect only, or we have a school to be safe, and I'm all for those kind of things, but they're minor compared to the vision of a Christian school. And the vision has to be much greater than that, it has to be bigger than that.
That's it.
A couple questions about the fire that occurred here. I think it was in 77, 78, I think is what I gathered from the yearbook. I don't have a lot of the actual history of it yet. Could you fill us in of kind of the events that surrounded that?
Well, let me tell you my personal story on that. I was coming down from Shippensburg, I remember it well, and I was going to the hospital on Route 30 to visit somebody in the hospital, and I saw the smoke, and it looked like it was coming right at where our church was at. But I just thought something happened over there. So I went into the hospital. I went up to visit this fellow. He had this huge surprised look on my face, and I was asking him how he was feeling. He said, "Did you know your church is on fire?" I said, "Well, no, I did not." So I turned around and got out of there. I said, "If you don't mind, I'm leaving." So I drove up here, and it was the place was engulfed in smoke. And when I got here, the concern was the whole thing was going to go. And it was arson. Two young people had come in the building somehow and set something off, and it burned the back end of the building pretty badly. But it was coming down into the auditorium. What I remember so well about that, there was a group of students when I got here who were students of Cumberland Valley Christian School standing weeping, watching that building burn. And it dawned on me how much that meant to them to see that school going up in smoke like that. So the fire company did a great job getting it done. Nobody could figure it out. That one of the boys that committed the arson couldn't sleep at night, and he told somebody what happened. And that's how we found out what happened. The investigators couldn't find it out even. So it was quite a story about the fire. And so after the fire was over with, we went to Laymaster School, and I don't remember who told us about Laymasters, but it was available. Laymaster School was available. And so it became a perfect setting for us to go out there till we could get this place rebuilt. It was a front page story in the press. I mean, it was a big story here. And we held services. I remember the service we held, the first Sunday service after that. We literally packed everybody in the main auditorium. There was no place to put them. And it was a very moving spiritual service. It really was a very teary service. But God used that in a great way to bring us to new heights at the college. So it was quite an event. And I'll never forget going to that hospital room, and the guy said, your church is on fire.
What kind of logistics did you go through? I mean, you're used to having the school right down the hall, and now it's a good half-hour drive away, and that's if you drive like Pastor McKee. So how did you deal with
It's
a lot of
pretty
that?
challenging, yeah. It was really, really challenging because we would go down there, and I would go down there maybe 2 or 3 times a week because I was here. But we would go down there, because we had buses, it made it much more convenient. So many students came on the buses to school here, so we just began to ship them over there. And actually, I think the students liked it over there. I think it was a very enjoyable time for them. It was a time of getting used to it. It was like going to a new home, or a different home, I should say. And this is kind of neat for a while. But we were really glad to get everybody back here eventually. Mm-hmm. But it took us a while to do that. We had good insurance coverage. It was what was called replacement, that we could replace the building for what it was. Mm-hmm. There was some other costs that came on it, so we had the only labor and industry offering in the history of the church I've ever heard of at this church, where we had to raise, I think, $25,000 or $35,000, something like that. We called it the labor and industry offering because that's what it was for,
Yeah.
to rebuild some of the buildings. So it was built very, very well, and yeah, it was quite an experience, and we don't want people to go through many of those, but we saw a lot of good things come out of that as well.
And then the Bard building, which we now call the high school. How did that come about? And
Well, it's an interesting story. Harry Bard and Doris Bard were good members of the church, and there was an accident. I was actually preaching in Virginia at a conference, and their sons were killed in this accident, 2 boys. And so they were students here at the school, so I came home and had the service. And we dedicated that building to them. And many people gave. If you go up there, you'll see plaques on the wall of people who gave money. It was given in loving memory of those boys. And I always, the Bard family was very close to me because of situations like that. Harry's twin brother Larry just dropped over and died one day. And it was, again, a very unusual experience going through something like that.
he was my Sunday school teacher when he died.
Yeah, wonderful guy. I played racquetball with him. He was a great racquetball player. Hit me with a ball in racquetball one time. I thought I was shot with a bullet. It hit me so hard. And he was a very healthy guy, but he had some kind of a tweak in his heart that didn't work right. But that family was very, very precious to all of us. And that's how the Bard building was built up there. So a lot of memories with all of that.
And then I'm going to ask you about it because your name's on the basketball. Did you make the first basket?
Yeah, you know what I did, though? I went up maybe the closest layup I could make. I wasn't going to miss that first basket. Yeah, McKee had this idea I was going to take a 30-foot shot. I said, that's not happening. And somebody told me about a foul shot. I said, well, that's better if I went up and made a layup. The first basket, yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of fun when we dedicated that building up there, yeah. I'd actually practice foul shots to make when I thought, I'm going to make a layup. Too many people watching. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything that, a big memory of CVCS that you'd like to share with the interviewees and before we call this a wrap? Yeah,
I think one of the memories I have of the school is what I see in the graduates. I get of course, Pastor Mike and I are very close. We talk a lot about it, and Carl and all, but I read the literature that comes out of here with some of the students, where they're going, what they're doing. I'm extremely proud of that, extremely proud. I'm glad the school that we started is so strong today. It'd be my desire to see it grow to many hundreds of students, continue to become an excellent school. I'm thrilled it's an accredited school. I think that's the best route to go with a Christian education. I'm thrilled that people that can go out of the school can go out and go wherever they want if they've done their work, if they've done the proper preparation for it. So I'm delighted about all those kind of things. And one of the things I think that delights me the most probably is to see the people like yourself that's here. Your parents were a big part of this church, and you saw fit to come and to teach, and that means a lot to me. Seeing people like Nancy and Sue Schmuck and these people here, and I think another 100 years they'll probably still be here the way it's going with them. They so love this place, and that means a lot to me. It really does. But to see it going and growing and doing well, I couldn't ask for anything better than that. I'm very appreciative of the church, of Pastor Mike, and his full, undying support for Christian education. When he came here, he did not have background in Christian education. And he has really got hold of the horns and done a great job with that. He has a great business mind that God's given him. And so there are some great days ahead of us here at Cumberland Valley Christian School. And you are 3 wonderful young people. Thank you for being here with me today. I appreciate it so very much, yeah. Now, the only other thing is you have to come to Davis College. That was the commitment here, right?
Gentlemen, now's your chance. They were going to ask for scholarships.
Yeah, I will give you I've got scholarships. I got presidential scholarships. I do. In fact, I'm giving out one tomorrow to Pastor Mike for $4,000. Yeah. Not for him to come, but for somebody else to come.
I was going to say, I think he's done.
Yeah, I'll be giving it up in the service today, or tomorrow morning. Yeah.
So from the Honors U.S. History class, we say thank you, Dr. Pedrone, for stopping in and helping us out with this. And we're looking forward to looking up more history of the school. This is going to be a multi-year project. And one of those projects is going to be, we're going to try to chase down a lot of the alumni and find out what they're doing. And things
If
like
I
that.
can ever help with anything like this, call me. I'm here a
Mhm.
lot. I come through here a lot. Happy to talk about it. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And then cut.
Thank you, students. You did great. Thank you very much. You all should be newspaper reporters. You're digging deep.
This is my 18th year teaching.
Really?
Yeah.
That's hard for me to capture.
Yeah, I know.
It's hard for me to capture that. Wow.
And there's also, right now in the school, we have about 425, 430.
Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, that's exciting. And I understand there's quite a few foreign students coming in now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're working with about 3 or 4 different agencies, and we have about 15 to 20 international students, primarily from Korea, but we do get some from China,
Yeah.
Taiwan.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. See, I remember your teacher when he was very small.
I was
Yeah.
the first patch.
Is that right? You're the first patch?
Yeah.
How about that?
Mhm.
What year was that?
Would have been the yearbook that we've all been looking at and taunting me with is the 84 yearbook.
84.
Yeah.
You got pictures of you being Patch?
Yes.
today?
Yes, you guys have been laughing at them for the last 3
I
weeks.
didn't
You
see
still do
you.
Patch the Pirate?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Patch the Pirate stopped about 6 years ago. I think were you guys?
We didn't do it.
So it would have been
We were
7
the
years.
first
Yep.
year to not do it.
That's all right. We're finished.
Are you done?
Yep. We're just sitting here chatting.
We had.
I mean, we're still recording because I haven't hit the buttons yet. But
This is my girl, my little granddaughter Olivia.
Oh.
Say hi to everybody. How are you, sweetheart? How you doing? This used to be Grandpa's office. What do you think of that?
I don't care as long as Grandpa's here.
We're gonna have fun tonight. I think there's face painting out there for
Yeah,
her.
there's all kinds of things.
Where's Ella?
She's over there, down there.
Tell her get in
At the
here. Tell her
pictures.
get in here.
At mommy.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Came through okay?
Yep.
Are you all going to be here tonight and tomorrow, or?
I'll be here tonight.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I couldn't make it.
You can't make it. Yeah. Do you go to church somewhere else then?
Yeah, I used to go to Bethel, but now my family's going to Chimsburg Baptist.
Oh, yeah. That's the Southern Baptist Church in
Yeah.
town. Yeah, sure. Who's the pastor there now?
Kenny Craig.
Kenny Craig. I don't know him. Yeah.
He just started, I don't know how many years it's been.
Mhm.
It's probably 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah. Now, does Bethel have a school down here anymore? They don't. Didn't they have a
I've
school?
never heard of them having a school, so
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna.
know.
But we've got the senior pastor's kids here,
Uh-huh.
Pastor Kite.
Seems
so
like
I'm
they
gonna
had-
chase him down and find
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Kid now. Because Cody just graduated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But there was
he's
no
still
enough.
He's still
But there was no other